Well, hello. How are you, Diego Machado, my good buddy from the Freedom Convoy? I wanted to basically bring you on board and have the audience meet you. Um, and I'm going to make myself small here and get you in the main frame. I'm really excited to have you on tonight, and welcome to the show, Diego. This is Fear Academy, where false evidence appearing real is going to be blown up on a regular basis. Um, so, Diego, I want our audience to kind of get to know our relationship and how we actually met. And it was it was a very unusual time, and this was after the Ottawa Freedom Convoy was kind of like blown up, and everybody was beaten out of Ottawa. And so I'm going to hand over the mic to you, and I'd like for you to basically tell the story of how you met me, and then I'll say where what was happening with me and how I ended up meeting you. So
Well,
welcome.
Christine, Jim, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to see you again after almost 3 years, almost.
Yes, yes.
And yes, I remember the conditions under we met, a special winter for Canada specifically. And yes, maybe if we start with that moment in Canada, we will see the same patterns right now. At that moment, was very difficult for Canada, and now we are living the consequences of everything. It's today a tough moment for Canada too, but we have alternatives, we have energy, and we have this opportunity to talk more in detail about it. For remember, was living a very tough moment. The 3 weeks of the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa was a very special moment for Canada and for the world in general. Um, I I was volunteer for the Freedom Convoy the 3 weeks. I was a regular citizen who was supporting the protest. And maybe if we have time in this initial conversation, you will understand why I was at the Freedom Convoy, because it was a matter of values for me. And maybe a little introduction. As you said, my name is Diego Machado. I was born and raised in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia. And I live in Canada since 2013, 2013, and almost 12 years ago. And I used to work as a lawyer, a human rights lawyer in Colombia, working specifically with the victims of the conflict. And maybe you remember, and your audience remember, Colombia had a civil war for more than 15 years. And obviously, in any kind of war, the victims are normally the most vulnerable. So I took the decision to work with this category of persons, victims of the conflict. Um, it was very hard task, especially in Colombia, in a country with a civil war. And we decided to immigrate to Canada in the category of skilled workers. Maybe you know, and your audience know, that we have here in Canada three at least categories of immigrant: skilled workers, temporary residents, and obviously refugees. With my wife, we decided to come to Canada to create our project of family. And it was very hard. We decided to start this journey in Quebec, speaking French with the society in Quebec. That I love Quebec, but I need to recognize the problems that the province have, and maybe the solution that we can find together also to have a better communication between provinces here in Canada, no? But Quebec is special. So my wife and I, we spent almost 9 years here in Canada trying to integrate specifically the socioeconomic cycle. Um, it's hard to a newcomer, specifically for a skilled worker, to reach the same level that they have in their country. No, for me it was
Yeah.
like this. It took 9 years before I got the same status, professional status, working with the federal government. So after 9 years of a difficult socioeconomic integration, finally I get a position in the federal work in as a federal worker in Ottawa. And then I lost my job because the mandates, the vax mandates. So at that moment in my life and our family, my wife is a nurse, and she lost her job too for this kind of um, tactical tactics. Um, and yeah, we need to. At that moment in our life, we lost all our hope, because from day one we worked for Canada. We decided to move here because we shared the values of this society that had been changed, no, recently. I mean, recently, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
And just for the audience, just so the audience knows, Diego, your first language that you learned here to assimilate into society was not English, was it?
No, it's French. My official Canadian language is French, and I love French. I think most people need to enjoy this privilege to have two language, two official language. But I understand as an immigrant that I don't need Spanish here, and neither other kind of languages.
Yeah,
Here
yeah.
we have two official language, and this is I post a video talking about it in my account of X, but specifically talking about the preparation that you need to have as an immigrant, as a newcomer, before you arrive to this country. Understand the values, learn a new language, and be prepared economically too. Because the different we have many difference between Canada and Colombia, for example, in their economy. So we need to be prepared, and it takes time. And now
Yeah.
when we see all these newcomers arriving like this without preparation, you need to see that there is a problem there. So
Yes, because
uh,
you actually had to learn the language. You prepared yourself to learn the language. You
mhm.
prepared yourself to assimilate into the society. If you don't mind me asking, do you is what religion do you practice?
I was baptized as Catholic,
Okay.
and now it's a constant progression. I
Yeah.
understand that we share many values in many religions, but I try to practice my religion as an ethic project for me. Ethics
Right.
is everything. And when I talk about values, and maybe we can talk more in detail later, is not only a religious practice, but daily practice. In every aspect of your life, ethics need to be present.
Yeah.
And the thing that I critique the most about politicians and the traditional parties is they don't have values. Their values can change, follow the money, follow the power. But the core values of a society is completely different of the values of their politicians. So yeah, I'm sure Christian values. I don't. I'm not a Catholic practitioner. I have many differences with the Vatican,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
the institution is the problem for me. Not
So,
the
so,
faith.
so, so I asked you the question because our audience, and as you know, PPC is very much Western values. PPC is about people integrating into our society. The whole issue around immigration from PPC's perspective is that we expect people that come here, if they are immigrating, to of course the way the PPC views it is that we want to have high skilled individuals, coming into our country. We don't want to just have a type of immigration system that basically lets everybody to pour in without any type of values, without our values. And the reason why I asked you this is because, again, my viewers, and many of them are PPC, or many of them are MAGA Americans that I've come to know over the years on originally Twitter and then X, are of the same principles, the same values, and that's what you're really talking about. You're espousing the Christian values. You're espousing the Western society values. Family, community, and then again, you're talking about assimilating into the country and into the traditions of what Canada really represents at the end of the day. And I wanted people to understand that as much as you have an accent, you learned French first, so you know both of the official languages of our country, which many people can't really say that they know both of those languages, that they both know French and English. Very, very few people are bilingual. So you've gone the extra step of also being bilingual as well. Now, that may be through necessity that you ended up that way, but I remember when I first met you, you were very fluent in English, even though you were living and working in Quebec. So I remember our first meeting, and I also remember the circumstances of our meeting, because you were working as a volunteer for a group of freedom fighters and freedom fighter truckers. They were very much a peace-loving, very patriotic group of French Canadians, that I had the honor to meet, and I thought they were all great people. And I knew right off the bat that when I talked to you from the very beginning, because we were in a very trying time. We were in a time when you had to read people pretty quickly, and you remember how difficult it was for us to even arrange our meeting, that it had to be in secrecy. Everybody was worried that somebody was going to stab somebody in the back, or that somebody was a policeman that was going to take them into jail or whatever. So we were under very, very, very tense circumstances when we met at the restaurant that was an agreed to meeting place after we actually had agreed to meet when we were at a hideout. I want people to sort of understand that the way you and I met, and the way that we came together, and the way that we ended up trusting one another, was almost like the way that you would trust somebody on the battlefield, where it was a war, and we didn't know who was good, who was bad, but we were looking for the good in everybody, and that's how you and I ended up being together. So go ahead.
And
sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to bring
perfect,
that point.
Because for me, that moment was very special, and I had passed many things in my life and my family that sometimes we forgot what happened like 3 years ago. And it was very hard, very, very hard time for Canada, for all aspects of Canada. It was like a coup d'etat, but normalized by propaganda, etc. And yes, was a war. And I understood that. And my principal goal as a volunteer in the Freedom Convoy was physically be there to live this magic experience, 3 weeks of sharing Canadian values. I had the opportunity to talk with people from all provinces, but also people who comes from other countries, and they feel Canadians too. And what's amazing, the testimonials of many people coming from communist countries that saw the same thing here in Canada at that moment, was a war, and was also a moment of revelations. We talked earlier about religion. Well, all the things that happened in the Freedom Convoy was like from other realm, everything. And my involvement was as a volunteer was like a person. I can cook, so I made some burgers, initially in the Confederation Park in Ottawa, then in Coventry, then finally in the final destination from some truckers. And obviously, as I am an international lawyer, a human rights lawyer, from day one, I wanted to share with all people in the streets, and especially with the organizers, the fact that everything that was happening during these 3 weeks was licit, was legal, and was a duty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for many patriots, you know. And you know what, Jim? I did it because in Colombia, I had also a similar experience with a protest. And I tell you that story. Maybe I don't know if we had the time to share that story, but
Yeah,
in
please
Colombia,
do. I want people to understand your background and where you came from, and the fact that you were already in a war torn. You had already come through a war torn environment, and you and you joined in this revelatory moment in Canada. Where there was so much tension, but at the same time there was so much love, and there was so much people reaching out to one another to protect one another, to give each other support, and to come together as a society that was in pain.
was so magic. We talk a lot about a lot of tension, and normally when you have tension, you need expression, you know, and
Yeah,
was the most beautiful expression about Canadian values, you know. As I said, I met people from all provinces, all backgrounds, and we discovered the solidarity, the friendship, the how we can change the world, you know, because we did it. And I said, all people who come to Ottawa during this period, we changed the world in some way. Was the Freedom Convoy was the first global manifestation or expression about biopolitical control. You know, some people talk about transhumanism, fascism 2.0. I prefer to talk sometimes about transhumanism, you know,
yeah,
because everything
yeah,
is connected. Everything, you know, the
absolutely,
mandates, the vaccine, the agenda that it's in our schools, in our education system, but also the corruption of our political class. Everything is connected. So you need
absolutely.
to understand that you cannot analyze a subject isolated. You need to put it together to understand what we can do, and we can do a lot of things, you know. And maybe with further discussions, we will be able to give more alternatives and initiatives to people. But let me tell you about why I understand that I need to do something in the Freedom Convoy. In Colombia in 2019 was a very huge protest, almost 2 months in all capital cities in Colombia, where people had people protesting and protesting. And our culture in Colombia as a country, it's violence, you know, and the clash were very violent. Almost 200 people died in this kind of manifestation of protests and repression. 2,000 people were blessed, like injured in some way, you know. And even in that conditions, 2 months of protest, the government of Colombia allows their citizens to have a discussion about the problems that they had. And my role in the distance, because I during that moment I was in Canada here, is try to help people by phone and tell them you have the right to do it, you know, and please don't give up. And I can help you with legal assistance, etc. Pro bono, because you don't have to receive money to help people.
Yeah,
So I try to do it. I try to talk with authorities, with the government, etc. Try to mediate during this hard period in Colombia. And we are talking about a banana republic as Colombia, Venezuela. You know, normally
yeah,
we have the stereotype there are banana republics, but even in Colombia we have more rights than here in Canada. And then we had here in Canada the declarations of the Emergencies Act. You remember? Was terrible.
yes, Yep.
The
Oh
accounts
yeah.
were frozen. It was like a coup d'etat in French, And in Colombia, before the president took this kind of decision, like Emergencies Act in Colombia, he needs the approval of the Congress. 2 months it takes, And then when the Congress approves, then the Supreme Court it has the last decision about this invocation of Emergencies Act. We saw how it goes. It went here in Canada, like this.
Yeah.
The rule of
Exactly.
law disappeared like this,
Yeah.
only for the decisions of a bad actor. And all the political class is compromised, It's not only the liberals. The other parties were complicit. And if you allow me, especially for your audience, I want to say thank you to Maxime Bernier, because it was a real guy, We have in the political spectrum only actors, and the person who was there was Maxime Bernier, and all the things that followed, the political persecution of the leaders of the manifestation, the things in Coots, Alberta, with the Coot boys. We are living still in a hard moment in Canada, but we are so easily distracted, with the current
Yes.
thing, with Axe the Tax, a new slogan, a
Yeah.
new slogan. This guy, Pierre Poliev, he is in campaign since, I don't know, 2021, in constant, he's in campaign. He's the longest campaign in Canada, I think, and they don't
Absolutely.
understand the real problem of the issue. And it's sad, but some of the supporters or members of the Conservative Party don't understand the complexity of the issue, If you want to
No.
understand, you need to take, like a metaphor, an onion, and the onion has layers,
Yeah.
If you want to be deep in the layers, you need to be ready to criticism, keep your critical thinking intact. Is sometimes difficult, because the current narrative is there is division, pick a side. There is division, new issue, division, pick a side, pick a
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
So
But
they are not.
it's all within the same box though. So pick a side of the sandbox. You can pick this side of the sandbox or that side of the sandbox, but whether you pick Trudeau or whether you pick Polyev, you're still in the same sandbox at the end of the
It's a
day.
false dichotomy,
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people of Canada, as the people of any country, has more power than the politician is supposed to have, They
Yeah.
are public servants, but they act like kings, like superior to us. And we have the power, but we are divided. We are with our own bias, we are own stereotypes towards the other. We don't want hard conversations, but we need to have it.
Yes, and the what they've done very very well, and this is how they've gaslit the public. They've made it a us against them game. So it's blue against red, or blue against orange, or this color against that color. But they keep everybody in that moment of fighting and looking at what supposedly is supposed to be the enemy, but the enemy is all of them. And when you brought up Maxime Bernier was the only federal party that was there every day on the ground with the people, and he did not act like a king. He acted like somebody that cared, and that's exactly what he is. He cares about Canada, deeply
Yeah.
cares about Canada. So and I remember, because I was in a capacity with the PPC at the time. So I remember telling people that this is the party you guys should be looking at, and I remember many people were fighting it that were either conservative or liberal or whatever they were. But at the same time, I also remember witnessing many people looking, and all of a sudden that mind control broke when they saw Maxime standing on stage, or they saw Maxime walking down the street, when they saw a federal leader that wasn't hiding in a big building making passing judgment and decreeing laws and shutting and voting on whether to shut it down or do this or do that. This guy was right there in with the people, like next to the people. No security, none of that bull, everything. He was like right there on the ground with all of us. So and I'd like you to, because I remember talking to the group that you were representing, that you were helping. Many were very much pushing back against politicians, and rightly so, because they were truthful. I mean, like many people did not trust any of the politicians. So it was very hard for me to try to convince people, but many people were convinced because they actually saw him on the street with the people. And now explain to me, because I know you remember me talking about the PPC. You remember me talking about this is the only solution, even though we were in a war where the politicians had shut us down and had basically destroyed our freedoms and our sovereign position of being human beings, where they were relegating us into animals being corralled and chased out of town and having to go to hideouts where we actually had to meet in a clandestine way because we were worried that we were going to be arrested, and that would be it. It'd be finished. It'd be over with. Now, why don't you explain to the audience, how you came to this revelatory position from your perspective of how Maxime Bernier is now somebody that you look to as someone that could be the one that would save Canada, that could be a party that could save Canada. So why don't you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I only had the opportunity to meet Maxime once in my life, and I want to have a conversation with him. Probably he had received a lot of private message from my ex account, because I think he's a real person. I can see when somebody is an actor or not. Because you take risk, and I invite all people to think this idea. Obviously, the conservatives are always playing safe. He hide sometimes, but sometimes they appear. Maxime was always there. And the thing that I understand is he is a real person. I want to have a conversation with him because I understand that the current situation of our system need to be changed. Yeah. We need deep constitutional reforms in Canada, not only as my opinion, but the only way to have Canada for the future, not the future election as the Conservative Party or the Liberals on the NDP think, but for the next generation. There is a huge difference between politicians and real citizens with power. We need to think about next generations, not next elections,
Yeah.
And I recognize that the PPC is an open door for this kind of ideas. But before engage my personal view with the reforms that Canada needs, let me tell you one example about immigration, for example. The only party who talks about moratorium in this kind of madness is the PPC. We had Pierre Poilievre talking with international students, promising direct flights from India to Canada, then allowed his colleague talk in Punjabi or other language directly to international students, talking about you have rights, there is no deportation. Maybe you remember, or your audience remember. And then we have Maxime Bernier talking directly with these international students, telling the truth. You have to go. You don't have the right to be here, not because it's racist or we are bad persons in Canada. It's simply you need to understand working in Canada, living in Canada, studying in Canada is a privilege, and you need to respect that. For me, as I said in the beginning, it took 9 years to reach the same level that I had in Colombia. And people now in the first week, the newcomers receive a lot of help paid with our taxes, and not it's not personal issue against immigrants. I am an immigrant too. But from day one, I understand that I am in Canada and not in Colombia. So my culture in Colombia, I left behind my culture and my family in Colombia. It's a hard decision,
Yeah.
but I recognize that my values and the project for my family were it's like a family dream, In Canada, this is the reason that I love Canada. I'm not white, my eyes aren't blue, but I
Yeah.
love Canada and I speak two languages that make me bilingual in the official language of Canada. I love these people in Canada. Excuse me. Canada is a great country, but the political class try to convince us that we are a post-national state, that we don't have culture, that our culture is multiculturalism. So you can pray in the streets without any restrictions. You can block streets for praying, but you cannot make a demonstration in front of Parliament, the House of Democracy in Canada. So we have double standards here, and
Yeah.
maybe this is a principal cause of our decline as society. We in Canada, we had a high trust society, and we are importing people coming from low trust societies context, and
Yeah.
maybe it's not their fault. They grew up in that context, when the shortcut is necessary, when the violence is the common rule, where corruption is the rule too, and
Yeah.
they need to
Bribery.
understand.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, bribery, paying to get ahead of somebody else. I
In
mean,
bad
yeah.
faith sometimes, bad faith. I saw in Alberta many people from a specific country that are are not sharing our values. They are not hard worker people. They believe that everything needs to be free, and obviously because we are polite here in Canada and we have values and manners, they think that we are dumb.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think that we are living in a stolen land, trying to eradicate the principles and the values, historical values of Canada. So maybe in the layer that we talk about the onion, mass immigration is the thing that we can see the most, you know, and
Yeah.
maybe this is our priority. I'm not a hater. I don't hate people because they race or their cultural values. I hate people who doesn't respect the other and the values in that are present in the land that they are. I think the good people who comes here and understand that Canada is a hardworking country with rule of law, with high trust values. It's good if the productivity is there. But now when you receive only refugees or international students, we can see right now the productivity in Canada is in the lowest rate right now. We don't young people cannot find a job, because all the principal student jobs were co-opted for international students, or people looking for asylum here. So it's tough, and I understand that many people who appertain to a diaspora of communities are mad, and with reason, because for people who were working here for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, adapt to this society, it's an insult to see the things that are happening right now. So I am maybe in this kind of position, and yes, I think they need to adapt, but accept and respect the rules that we have here. And now we don't need only restore the condition that we had in the past about immigration, security, borders, etc., but we need to go further, beyond, because the things that we are expecting in the future are not easy to handle. Um, I'm very, very concerned about the Balkanization of Canada, like the internal division, territorial
Yep.
division in fragments. And this is from some people, there is for the other one, they believe in that, and they believe in, no, we don't need that. And foreign powers wants that, you know?
And this is,
Uh,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I was, if I could just interject, I was talking to somebody who I respect very much the other night, and this is exactly the topic that came up: the balkanization of Canada, and with this mass hurried, unchecked, unfettered immigration, the balkanization of our country is accelerated. The Ministry of Multiculturalism was really the first step in the balkanization of our country, where all of a sudden now you didn't need to, assimilate. You didn't need to adopt the way of Canada, where all of a sudden now you could come and with a different flag, and you can fly that flag and then be in a ghetto, in an ethnic ghetto, and you then practice the very thing that you left behind, but now you can bring that here and practice that here. And then what that does is the culture that is incongruous to our country is also brought here as well. You were talking about, the low trust societies that are coming here, and then they operate in that low trust environment, and then bring that low trust environment into those ghettos, and then that spills over into what was at one time a very high trust society, a very respectful society, a society that was very open armed and helpful, and loving to everybody. All of a sudden now that's taken advantage of, as you were saying, that these different ethnic groups look at Canadians like they're pushovers. We can come here, we can get money from the government, and I know for a fact that there are many people that came to this country as either refugees or immigrants very recently that are getting funded by the government, and then they're also going out and doing work under the table. So they're working under the table for $10, $12 an hour, and then there's employers out there that are employing them and paying them cash and so this is where, and then of course students aren't going to get jobs when the employer can pay $10 an hour instead of paying minimum wage. So, and it does happen. As much as people don't want to accept the fact that this is happening, it's happening rampantly. It's happening in my community here where I live, in Niagara. It is all over the place where that's exactly how it operates. And there are many, 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 many ethnic groups that I talk to who have actually, so I'm calling them ethnic groups, but they are Canadians. They've been here for 4 or 5 generations, but they themselves know these people and know the game that they're playing, and they're saying this is that. So the people that are scamming the system are saying, look at, we can go and get money from the government, and then we can work under the table, and now I can buy nice clothes, I can drive a nicer car, and the rest of it. So it's there, and these are the low trust societies that come here to take advantage of the goodness of our country, and then take advantage of the system, and then they basically are scamming everybody all the way through. And this is why we've got this huge breakdown and huge corruption all the way through. And the government does not have enough people in any type of enforcement or checking on these people to be able to actually handle the load of people that have come into our country. So we're overrun with this whole new form of destruction in our country. My wife, who is a hardcore Canadian, and her family is 2 or 3 generations of Canadian and then British. She got fired so that these temporary visa, so visitor visa temporary workers actually took over her job, and that employer hired additional people at that level, paying them cash. They pay the temp agency cash money, and then that temp agency then doles out the cash to the workers. So it's completely covered in the accounting. So the accounting department, you come and you check on them, it's all fine. It's not that accounting they should be looking at. They should be looking at who's getting paid what kind of cash at that point. So going back to what you were talking about, where you were talking about the balkanization is not going to stop with this rampant immigration that is being forced on us. And you yourself can see that. Go ahead.
I'm a little worried, and maybe this is the reason that I try to talk with many people, trying to use social media to share my message. And it's not fear, because we don't live in fear anymore. It's a call for immediate action, immediately,
Yeah.
we don't have law enforcement that it's with Canada values anymore, you know?
No.
And I'm not talking about the tampons in the for the army, but our officials are speaking foreign language to address directly to a specific community. We have political leaders, politicians that every day change their costume, follow the next community photo up, you know?
Yeah.
This is not Canada. And we are importing mercenaries. I don't want to say that all refugees are mercenaries, because maybe there is still good people in good faith that need some kind of help. But let me tell you, it's not the majority. The majority of people that come specifically from Latin America in this caravan, from the Central America, North America, and that is coming here, it's not good people, you
No.
know? Specifically, and we'll talk about in detail later if we have time, but we have the same condition with the same patterns that it's happening in Europe, in United States, in Canada, but each region of the world has their particularities. When we talk about balkanization, is because we are importing also mercenaries, people who think that we are dumb, and we are, because we are polite, we respect the rules, and they prefer to make manifestations with swords in the street,
Yeah.
and sending a message. Everything is symbolic, Or you have people in Toronto, I think, with a mask telling an officer, "Oh, you will be dead 6 feet underground," because I can do it and I have people behind me. This is a kind of cowardice, but they understand that they can do that because we don't have a rule-based government here. You know, we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
marionettes, puppets.
Yeah. That's right.
But they
And
are
he, and he,
following a script.
and here and so to add to that, in here in Niagara, we have Mexican migrant workers, but nobody talks about the fact that there's a cartels here, cartels that are actually selling drugs, doing the prostitution, shaking down. So there's cartel leaders that are shaking down migrant workers for money to keep them safe. Because if they don't pay them the safety money, then they're going to get beaten by the very people that are saying that they're going to protect them. This actually exists in this country. But people, because we're nice people, Canadians are nice. They also don't even want to know that this could actually be happening here. But it is happening. It's
Yeah.
happening. My wife, when she worked in the agricultural industry, she actually highlighted cartel members that were shaking down workers in these work homes, like literally shaking them down. So it does exist. You're 100% correct. And this is where people need to wake up. People need to wake up, and the government. It's almost like the government doesn't even care. They're more than happy to bring in that chaos.
It's part of a big strategy. They want, the globalists, the transhumanists, they want low morality in our citizens.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a demoralization tactic. We can see a lot of examples, but one of them, Tim Hortons, a proud Canadian product. When you buy a local coffee in your community with a beautiful taste, etc. And now it's a disgusting place to go. And I am a coffee lover. It's
yeah,
not a good
yeah,
coffee anymore. I don't have anything against Tim Hortons, but the fact that they are useful for the strategy of take off our values. It's a
yeah,
little example, but very telling. So we have layers in that onion. We can see the destructions of our cities, with 10 cities, people homeless. But we have also fentanyl crisis, in the streets. people
Yeah.
that are living in very, very difficult situations. Then you have members of certain gang that are coming here. And I let the people later make their own research about El Tren de Aragua, the Aragua train, El Tren de Aragua. This is a gang coming from Venezuela, a very, very hard, very violent gang. It's similar to ISIS or Daesh in the Middle East. Their practice are the same, you know. There is a region between Panama and Colombia that it's called the Darien Gap.
Yeah.
And people from all around the world, not only Venezuelan people, are coming to this point to underneath, undertake a caravan to United States and soon to Canada, you know? And basically here, we are not ready to make we are not prepared for the level of violence that these people carrying with them, you know. We have a weak government, weak authorities, officials that are speaking in other languages that are more interested in the repression of people who share the Canadian values. So
Yeah.
this is a message too, you know, when the repression come a rule here in Canada, became a rule, you know, think differently to the government is a crime. Today we have very bad news from the people of the Freedom Convoy with Pat King. Maybe you already know.
Yeah.
So we have a context with political persecution, and we have no rule of law in this country. This country is still the country that we love because they're people, because we are hardworking people, and all days we're going to work. It's not because the excellent job of our authorities. They want the destruction of Canada in many, many, many ways. But to understand the context, so we have people, bad people coming from the south, but also members of the diaspora, a specific diaspora that are owners of our housing market, are owners of our car market. So, and they try to make a cartel with that, you know. And a cartel, the problem, it's a monopoly, you
Yeah.
know. It's the thing that goes against free trade and free market, you know. They want to create cartels of everything. And the problem with this caravan coming from the Darien Gap is we have everything there, everything bad: drug traffic, human traffic, ecological danger, because this region is specifically biodiverse. You know, it's a
Yeah.
very, very difficult thing. And politicians are okay. Ask the tax.
Yeah.
Ask the tax when you have you have your country in flames.
Yeah.
My God, you need to be you need to wake up. You know, and obviously the mass immigration, it's an ingredient to the symphony of destruction that they want, and we
Yeah.
cannot allow this to happen. And this is the reason that I want to share some ideas, some personal experience, professional experience, specifically for the next generation. I repeat, the next generation is the most valuable uh, people right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that the boomers are bad, or you know, but next generation needs to think in the next generation needs. You know, we need a stronger state
Yes.
for with more check and balance. You know, we need to get accountability from our public servants. Now they only know impunity, and we have now people backs injured, people lost their families, their sons, not only the job. My tragedy, my personal tragedy that I shared in the Freedom Convoy was nothing compared with the tragedy of many people who lost their own people, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the mental health of people. Who is the candidate who is talking about that right now? It's a real issue, a very
Yeah.
important issue. Ask the tax. They think that we are dumb. As bad immigrants think that people in Canada are dumb, politicians think that the people of Canada are dumb.
Yeah.
They have that in common, you know? Everything is perfect for a disaster. And now is the time for good people to do the good thing, you know? I don't want to ask anybody to get a vote blindly, but to reach out the PPC and try to share their ideas. I understand that I have critical point of view in many aspects, you know, and we don't need
Yeah.
to agree in anything. We need to agree in our common necessities, you know. It's not a slogan for a campaign, a common sense campaign. It's common values, core values of Canada, you know.
Yeah.
And I know the time flies when we are happy. I understand that this is only an introduction about many topics. But the conclusion that I had, it's everything is interconnected. And this is the moment, not for the political correctness, not for playing safe, but for think about Canada. Canada is
Yeah.
Canada. Canada is not the United States, thanks God. Canada is not Palestine, is not Israel, is not Ukraine. Canada is Canada. We have
Yeah.
problems here. We cannot allow more money to foreign wars while our people is dying here, you know, living in tents or, you know, thinking to take their lives again. And now we have a public program about it, you know, the medical assistant in dying.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you have that for
Absolutely.
Canadians, but you have also UBI for newcomers. So it's the moment to think about Canada, not only the superficial layers of the problem, but go deeper and deeper and deeper. I understand that sometimes it's difficult because we have our own bias, our own stereotypes, and our own limitations, you know? And you need to take off these kind of limitations and understand. I recognize that for somebody it's difficult to understand that an immigrant is talking about Canadian values, you know? Because some people think that because I don't have a European name. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
funny. I
Yeah.
had once a comment. I regularly made videos when I want, and I had a comment for a lady that she's hyper nationalist and said, "Oh, but Diego is not an European name, you know." And I
Yeah.
said, "You're wrong. Diego is an European name that comes from Portugal and Spain, and Europe has many
Yeah.
countries, you know."
Yeah.
I want to share an history too. I have a professional background here in Canada, but I had also a lot of survival jobs here in Canada. You know, one of them was in a restaurant, and my boss called me always Gringo, Gringo, come here, Gringo, come here, in French, no? And obviously, I was upset, I was mad, but I understand that sometimes these some kinds of comments are ignorance, you know, talking. So
Yeah.
I took this lady in my best mood and tell, you know what? The origin of the word gringo comes from Mexico. And it was the way that the Army of Mexico called the Army of the United States because their uniform was green. So for them, gringo is green, go from
Yeah.
here, green, you know, gringo. So the lady, I think she doesn't understand my point, you know. But from that moment, she starts to call me Diego instead of Gringo, you know. And I think that we need to do this kind of reflections when we have people thinking
Yeah.
in ignorance, you know. But we need to be open to all kind of opinions because sometimes people are looking for an echo chamber who uh, make their own opinions solid, you know. And
Yeah.
I think now is the time for critical thinkers, philosophers, humans, and people who loves the humankind to think differently, to stick on their values and go beyond the division that they want to provoke. You know, we are Canadians, we have values, and the Freedom Convoy was the perfect example for that. You know, I'll be
Absolutely.
always
Yep.
thankful for with the organizers of the Freedom Convoy, with the people, the regular Canadians who come and spend time there in a very cold winter in Canada, and that now they are distracted. You know, they pick a side. oh, I
Yeah.
am that. No, you are still Canadian, and the fight is still open. You know, and we don't need to wait until the next election to talk about politics. Politics, it's a daily work
Yeah.
with ethics. Politics and ethics. Politics is not only an electoral issue. It's a way that you talk with your neighbor, talk with your community, with your family, you know? And when we can put all that together in a spectrum of growing. But yeah, this is an initial discussion, Jim.
Yeah,
I understand that we are running
uh,
out of time, and I don't want
yes.
to.
No. So what I wanted to say to you is that I first of all, I'm really glad that we reconnected. A few weeks ago on X, I saw that you were, operating on X, and then we reached out to one another. I actually reached out to you quite a few times, but I think because we have, the way that X algorithms work, they obviously try to keep the freedom fighters apart from one another. But
Freedom isn't
yeah,
free.
yeah, yeah,
Freedom
yeah,
isn't
that's
free.
right. Yeah, yeah, no, it's
We,
not free. No, no.
we have an like a simulation of freedom, but isn't free. In on X, when you talk about specific topics, algorithm
Yeah,
take you out. And you know what? I regret because I'm not an internet guy and social media figure. And I only create this account because I have a very tough situation with my family in Quebec. Maybe I can introduce this situation, Jim. I know we have a small amount of time, but I need to move from Quebec, that is the province that I used to love, try
yeah,
to integrate, work for them, because, and it's all around Canada, but Quebec was my example. All the public institutions, schools, daycares are engaged in a very bad ideology and a transhumanist ideology. You know, I don't want to say a lot about that because maybe it allows a next conversation, but the way is different. You know, if you have a school or a daycare who are brainwash your kids, please, father, daddy, and mommy, take your kids off of this institution. Take the
yeah.
risk to homeschooling your kids. Share them your values. Teach them your values, because there is a war that is playing in other scenarios too. It's not only the political spectrum.
Yeah.
The characteristic of the new fascism is the imbrication between public and private, you know, only to control. So maybe we can talk in another
Oh, for
conversation.
sure. Yeah, yeah. No, no.
Yes.
I definitely want to have more conversations with you without question. And I think that one of the things that one of the key aspects that you hit on is the fact of critical thinking. And you were talking about peeling the onion back because there's so many layers, and there's so many layers to the deception that is taking place. And to simplify things by saying axe the tax actually hides the multitude of layers of destruction that is currently being foisted on Canada, which is being put on Canada. The layer of destruction, the level of destruction of our society is we've never been to this place ever, and
No.
it's all like a complete psychological tearing down of our society by putting so many people in one location into our environment to just create complete chaos. And then as you said, they've got that simple word of axe the tax. But with the PPC, what PPC, if you look at the PPC platform and you look at the policies that the PPC are espousing, the policies that they're putting forward are all critical thinking. And I know that it's all about critical thinking because I know some of the people that are actually working in these working groups to create these new policies, and many of these new policies, and I call them new. They're not really new. Max has had these policies in his head and with his team the whole time. What is happening now is that All of this is becoming documented. There are other people that have come into the party that are also sharing their views, and then those views come together to create the platform that the PPC has. But it is a critical thinking platform. It is not the type of platform that other parties have, which is a bunch of vague dialogue that absolutely has no meaning whatsoever, and it could be interpreted in 50 different ways. When the PPC says we're going to have a moratorium on mass immigration, that's exactly what they mean, a moratorium on mass immigration. When they talk about reevaluating our immigration system, that's what they're talking about. And it's not about axe the tax. So it's all about bringing people like yourself and like you, what you're really bringing forward. And that's why I'm so happy that we've basically reformed again from the time that we first met. And I remember you talking about that you were an international human rights advocate and lawyer. And I remember very much when you were taking notes, when we were talking about the government, when we were talking about our human rights and the deficiency of our Charter of Rights, the deficiency that the Charter of Rights is not a Charter of Rights unless the government says you can get those rights. So the minute that when the government decides on whether you have rights or not, all of a sudden now you don't really have rights. So this is and these are the things we were talking about even in that coffee shop, or that restaurant.
I remember, yeah. And I regret in some way doesn't have the chance to talk before with you and many people in the party, because I understand that now it's more important than ever,
But now you will.
Yeah, and I hope, as I said, one day have the chance to talk directly with Max Bernier and their executive committee of the party, because I understand that we have only one alternative here. We have also a fake conservative party that it's engaged with war. When Pierre Poilievre said, "I am only a simple guy from the prairies," and the next day he said, "We need to bomb Iran." I had the question: he is ready to go and fight for a foreign country in a foreign war, or they want only that people like me and my kids were to war? It's irresponsible. Yeah. It's very irresponsible to follow the narrative and always pick a side. Our side, it's Canadian side. We cannot allow this fake conservative say always, I don't care from ordinary people. No, it's fake. It's fake, And my message for the PPC, obviously for Maxime Bernier and the executive committee, it's to open the doors from people from all backgrounds and have hard discussions that are in line with the core values of the PPC and go forward. We need to think in new things. We need to think in new things, in new ways, The Canadian political system is obsolete. And maybe it's a hard truth, but it's harder to ignore, There are other ways to administrate the public, like in a republic, for example. We are not a banana republic. We are a banana constitutional monarchy.
Yes,
Maybe it's the time to change that. Have a republic. Have more scenarios from check and balance. Demand or ask for more accountability, We have everything to be the country number one around the world, but we need to be strong here inside, internal in Canada, and have to have hard discussions, especially beyond the echo chamber of our people, our followers. I saw many people in social media with a lot of followers, and they are doing nothing, only propaganda. Some of them are paid for do that, and they manipulate our thinking. So again, my message specifically for PPC people, specifically young people, this is your country. Talk with your parents. Share with them who is doing the real job here, who is the real option here, and they need to be with us. They are not kings and we are not serfs. You know, we are
Yes,
people with power. We are humans, and we are able to create anything. But
and
we need
that's
to be aware. Uh-huh.
yeah, and that's the root of populism. You know what you're basically talking about, the old paradigm of the conservatives, the liberals, the NDP, the Green. That old paradigm is dead. It's just,
It's
the
there.
problem is that Canadians don't realize it because they're still being bounced around like a ping pong ball in the old paradigm. You don't know how many times I talk to people who are conservative. They got the blue. That's all in their brain. That this is their roots. This is what, and they don't realize that very blind view, that very narrow view of that they're this, or a liberal, that the liberal is this. They don't realize that we are Canadians. And the sooner they recognize that we're Canadians and we've been led down a path by these teams, the sooner we're going to recognize that we're a populist movement, and that movement has a home in the PPC. And that's the reality. And you are a prime example of somebody that came here in 2012 and respected this country's ethos, this country's way of being, and you left your home behind, and you wanted to make yourself a Canadian. And that's what you've done, is you've made yourself a Canadian, and you're proud to be a Canadian here in this country. And that's what people have to understand, is that Canada is a very, very unique country. And yes, it has a very rich history. It has a history that's rooted in past, but it's also a country that is rooted in different people immigrating to this country or being refugees that came here that assimilated into this country. My lineage is Hungarian. I was born in this country though, so I am a Canadian. But my parents adopted this country and loved this country and came to this country because of the freedom that it represented, and it represented that freedom that they were yearning for, and they were running away from a prison. They were running away from communism, and that's what Canada represented to them, and that's what Canada represents to me. And to see what we're going through right now is basically seeing Canada being destroyed by a very communist, fascist approach at the end of the day. And this is where PPC rises out of all of that. PPC is completely separate from all of that, and it allows for a place for people like you and for people like all Canadians who don't want to be in a box anymore, and they want their country to be number one, to have a place to voice that number one approach to our country, that love of our country, the love of our Western civilization views, and that is what we want for this country, and that we're proud to wave our flag as that free country. But as you said, we're not free. We're not
We are
free.
not free, and it's
No.
an eternal battle. You know, the
Yeah.
battle of for freedom. It's historical value. You know, Karl Marx said that the historically it's a war class war. You
Yeah.
know,
Class war. Yep.
but it's not that. It's freedom against authoritarianism. It's
Yeah.
freedom against fascism. It's control against liberty, and we need to be us. You know,
Yeah.
Canada first. Canada values matter. We are not United States, thanks God. And maybe I have many friends that it's Maple MAGA, and I respect that. But even with them, we have to build our own platform, our own proposal for Canadians. You know,
Yeah.
we can share
Yeah.
values with our neighbor. Why not? Obviously, it's historical. You know, but Canada is Canada, and we need to think about Canada because the globalism are attacking Canada, are attacking all the Commonwealth countries, you know, Australia,
Yeah.
United Kingdom, because they understand that they want to eradicate fierce war countries. And yes, maybe we can say, oh, we need to go out of Canada. We need to leave Canada, live in another country, safe country. But I think it's the moment to fight, not to
Yes.
fly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I have maybe the possibility to return to Colombia, or you're going. I don't know if I need to go to Russia, maybe. I don't know. But now my present is in Canada. My kids are Canadians. And for people who said, oh, you are not white, and my kids are Canadians. I am Canadian too. And I'm talking
Yeah.
about the future of my kids and their generation. Not only for me, not only for my kids, you know? We have everything to do it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And you know what? In closing, Diego, what I'm going to say is that we'll have more conversations. We'll schedule something maybe once a week if you're up to it. We can talk once a week, and then we can break down some of these topics that we were talking about, because there is a multitude of topics that we should talk about. And I really want people to hear your perspective, because when we were first together outside of Ottawa, we had very rich dialogue and conversation, and again, it was in the so-called fog of war, but yet we
Mhm.
weren't in a fog. You know what I mean? When we talked
Yeah,
and we sat together, everything was very clear. And it was almost like
yeah.
bombs were going off everywhere, but we were very clearly understanding what we were fighting for. And I'm so happy. I really am happy that I never pushed the PPC like in a rabid way, but I wanted people to understand that the people that wore the hat, that wore the PPC hat, had a certain set of values, and they practiced those values in the face of this war, and they kept those values in the face of this war. And I'm so happy that you saw that, and you now see that PPC and Max Bernier is the solution to having a free country.
It's the solution that we need to create together, you know?
Yeah,
It's not only Maxim. It's not about replacing one for another. It's the structure. And the
yeah,
structure is built by us, you know? And the only person who recognized the power of people right now is Maxime Bernier.
yeah,
He recognized that the people of Canada, it's in a maturity state of mind, and he doesn't think that we are children, and that we need slogans to be sure to
yeah,
feel security.
yeah.
I understand that the People's Party, it's an open invitation for all Canadians, and we need to get more members and more discussions about the future of Canada. I hope these initial conversations, uh, continue for sure. And I dream with the fact that had a conversation with Maxime, and other people of the party, because I have many ideas, but I don't want to impose my ideas, but put it in discussion, in
Yeah,
debate, you know?
yeah,
This is
yeah,
the thing that we need. Open
and
discussions, have hard discussions, conversations. We are richer when we have open discussions.
absolutely. And I know for a fact that once people see this interview, obviously the people from the PPC, various candidates, I'm sure that many of them will want to interview you and will want to talk to you and will welcome you to have open, hard discussions and input to add value to the PPC. And I know that for a fact, because the PPC is very open to all of this, without question. So, again, I thank you for agreeing to join me in conversation, and I look forward to our next conversation. And what I will promise you is that I will reach out to the people that I know in the PPC, including the people in headquarters. I'm going to ask them to review this interview, and I'm sure that we'll be working together in the future. And I know that you will be welcome with open arms.
I'm very thankful for your invitation, Jim. For me, it was a special moment because I have a lot of things about that moment in Canada with the Freedom Convoy. I feel more Canadian than ever. and I'm thinking Canada first. We
Yeah.
need to save our country and practice our values all day with our families, with our communities, in our towns. This is a new era, and we
Yes.
have the power to accomplish the most big things for the future of Canada. So don't be afraid to have discussions. Don't be afraid to challenge your knowledge, to challenge your own bias, and stay critical, stay brave.
And we can only learn from one another. That's the beauty. Is
Absolutely.
that if we leave ourselves, our minds open to learning, and never believe that we're the only one, that all we have is what we have in our own brain. The minute that we realize that we're all students of life, and that we're all students learning from one another, that's when we will grow and we will become a very rich society at the end of the day. So again, I thank you so much for this discussion. And as it was back then, it is now. We are warriors together and brothers in arms to defend Canada and what she represents at the end of the day. So
Absolutely.
make
We are
yourself
here.
yeah. Make yourself a wonderful evening, and I look forward to our next discussion. I will be in touch with you, but without question, I'm going to share this video, and I'm going to share your information with the party and many great people. There's many great candidates in our party that I'm sure will look forward to having discussions with you.
I'm
Okay.
looking forward for it. And thanks again, and to all your audience. Be brave. Be Canadian. This is the only Canadian wave. We
Yeah.
can do it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to do a little closing video, and then I will see you on the other side. Diego, don't leave. I'm going to just run a quick video, and then I'll talk to you after. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you as well.
See you.